Hey, I'm Russell Leeds.
And I'm Sue Gray.
And welcome to the Property Investors Podcast. This week, we're going to be talking about the new Renters' Rights Bill that Labour are bringing in. Now, this affects anyone that's a property investor or a landlord. And the crazy thing is, 95% of property investors and landlords don't actually know about this. So it's really important that you stay up to date with what is going on. We're going to be breaking down today all the new changes that are going to be coming in. And then we're going to be talking about what we think about it, how it affects you, and what you can do to mitigate some of the problems that landlords are facing. So first off, I think this is an important point. Obviously, Labour are in, but this is not it is a Labour bill, but this is not a Labour thing. This was coming in anyway.
Yeah.
Conservatives, they've changed the name of it. It was the Renters Reform Bill.
Yeah.
Now the Renters Rights Bill, but this was going to be coming in, and a lot of these points were kind of coming in anyway as well. The only thing I would say is I kind of always thought that the Conservative government, they kept delaying it, and it was almost like they were...
Like a joke, hoax.
They were threatening to bring it in to appease the renters. Whether they actually would have done, I think this will come in quite soon with Labour. So let's go through some of the key points. So first of all, Section 21, which is a no-fault eviction on fixed tenancies, that is going to be scrapped. And this was something that we were expecting.
Yeah.
Now, what this means is there's two different types of eviction notices at the moment. Do you want to talk us through what they are?
Yeah. So there's Section 21, which is you can just kick people out for no reason. And then there's Section 8. Section 8 is, so for example, if they're not allowed to have a dog, but they do have a dog, you can give them notice because they've got a dog. So it's for a particular reason, not just general. So if they're not paying rent, that would be Section 8. Obviously, at the moment, you can use Section 21 for everything.
But most landlords do, don't they?
Yeah, they do, yeah.
Because both of us have managed other people's properties as well.
I've never used 8.
I was going to say, I don't think I've ever used a Section 8. Why then do you use Section 21 at the moment, even when you could use a Section 8?
Right. So I do know landlords that use Section 8. And what happens is, if they've got a dog and you end up taking them to court, the day before court, they give their dog to their brother. They get to court and they go, oh, I don't have a dog anymore. And now you can't kick them out. So it's the same with rent. They have to be in a certain amount, 2 months rent arrears, no payments made whatsoever, clear months. So if you go through the lengthy court process and just before court they pay you £100, they haven't gone that clear period with no arrears anymore. And it gets kicked out and you have to do it all again. So Section 21 gets around all of that.
Because you don't need a reason.
You don't need a reason.
You don't have to prove it.
So it could be the dog,
or if
it could
they
be
go
anything.
to court and go, I didn't have a dog, I just happened to have a dog around at the time. How does the judge know? It doesn't matter, does it?
Doesn't matter.
So we don't typically use Section 8. Now, the big fear about getting rid of Section 21 is, I don't know if you've been to court many times.
No.
No, good. But when you do go to court, I've been to court a fair few times, the court systems are just rubbish. Like, it honestly is one of the worst. If it was a business, it would be out of business. No one would. It's only because we have to use them. They can get away with being so horrendous. And the big worry was, if suddenly we get rid of Section 21, we're going to have all these Section 8s all wanting to go to the courts.
Taking time, clogging the system, getting thrown out. Now
it takes a year to evict someone. And this was actually the reason why the Conservatives didn't bring that in. And they actually one of the reasons they delayed it was because they said, well, we don't think the court systems can cope. So what Labour have proposed, and I actually think in theory, this is a really good idea. Be interesting to see it in practice. But they're introducing an ombudsman office, a new ombudsman that will provide fair resolutions for landlords and tenants, reducing the court visits. Now, this is sort of, so rather than the landlord saying, I'm taking you to court, the landlord will say, or the tenant, I'm going to take it to the ombudsman because you're behind on your rent. And then the ombudsman will say, you're behind on your rent, pay up or get out. I assume.
We hope.
We hope.
That's what we hope.
That's what should happen.
That's what should happen.
And if it
that
does,
would be good.
That would be amazing. Because suddenly
It's more quick.
That's probably, if it works, I actually think this is a brilliant system, because at the moment you've got Section 21, which I actually do understand. I mean, I've been a tenant and a landlord. Most of my adult life I've been a tenant. And it is a pain when you get kicked out for no reason.
It is.
Just because, they want the property back.
Yeah, or just because they don't want you. I'll tell you a really common reason why people kick people out on a Section 21.
Go on.
They want higher rent. And rather than putting them, because they've not done anything for 3 years, rents have crept up and they go, oh, I can't charge them an extra $400 a month. So they kick them out and get someone on. I was talking to someone today who was a renter, is a renter still. They got kicked out on the Section 21, but we're selling.
Yeah.
They were paying $1,400 rent. They got kicked out. And then within a few months, there was new people paying $2,500. So they weren't really selling, but they couldn't put it up by $1,100. So they kicked them out because they'd let it go on and on at a low rent.
See, I had one where I can't remember the figures now. This is when I was renting. So I'll make them up, but it's roughly this. So I was renting, I think it was like $4,800 a month, say, right? And it was a pretty decent deal on the house. And after the 12 months, they put it up to $7,000. And I was like...
It's too much. So they have to kick you out? Or did you just move out?
No, I paid it, but I was annoyed. But I think that they'd underestimated. And then they were pushing it. But then I'm like, but the hassle of moving again, I've only been here a year. It's like a massive jump. So that brings us on to our next point, actually. So they're going to be also introducing an annual rent increase cap.
Yeah.
Basically saying that rent can only be increased once a year, and it's got to be capped at market levels. Now, who decides the market level? I'm assuming the ombudsman. So that I'm assuming what will happen is if you increase it and the tenant thinks that's taking the mick here, they can go to the ombudsman and go, they've just increased. So in my case, I was paying 4,800. I'd go to the ombudsman and go, guys, they've just increased it from 4,800 to $7,000 a month. Come on.
Yeah.
And they'd probably come back and go, yeah. So I actually don't think that's a bad rule either.
No, I don't. And I do actually think it's not hard to find out what market rent is.
No.
You could
You've got
easily...
to speak to a few agents.
Or go on Rightmove.
Yeah.
So it's not going to be that debatable, is it, what market rent is?
Certainly within a...
100, percent.
A percentage, yeah. So I also think putting the rent up more than once a year is kind of taking the mickey anyway. So for me, again... The only thing I don't like about it is I don't like legislation in general because
you don't know if you trust it.
I don't trust the government at all. But I do believe in supply and demand, capitalists. That's my belief. But as far as the rules go, I think it's people's homes at the end of the day. I think that's pretty fair. Next is decent homes standard. So they're saying they're going to be introducing a decent home standard. Again, this is very subjective. Ensuring safe... Well, I suppose if it's safe homes, it's not. Ensuring safe homes with fines of up to £7,000 for non-compliance. What do you think of that?
Well, again, it depends on what they call safe, but...
There's already quite a lot of legislation.
I would always want to provide a safe home. I wouldn't want anyone to live in a property that I thought was a danger. If it had mould, I'd get rid of it straight away. It's bad. Really bad.
Isn't that kind of already in place, though?
Kind of already in place, and that's what we don't know. What else is added, do we?
Yeah, what is a decent home standard?
I'll tell you what I would say about that, though.
Go on.
Shall I tell you what landlords don't care about their standards very much, broad brush? Council. They're always in the news for damp, mould, this problem, that, not fixing it. So... And councillors. There was an MP, I did a little video on it recently, who... claims to be like a renter's champion and everything, and then he's just been investigated. He hasn't got the right licensing. He's got ants in his properties. He's got black mold. It's like... So if they comply with that will be great, won't it? Because that'll be a hell of a lot of houses improved. I actually think it's probably another good... Again, being a tenant in many different houses. Do you remember the first house I lived in, Lapwing, and it had moved in, there was mold in there immediately. Yeah.
And I was like, it is all in the bedroom. And then what do? Do you want it to move house? You do want the landlord. It's fair. It's the landlord's home. Yeah. You're just renting it. Well, they're getting the capital growth on it, aren't they? Yeah, and more than capital growth, there's all sorts of growth on it. Next, again, do you know what? The more I read this, I'm actually thinking quite a lot of these I actually quite like.
Yeah.
Next, a digital database. So a new digital database that will give landlords, tenants and councils easy access to vital information.
Fine.
I mean, in general, I think that's probably a good thing. I would particularly like it if there was a tenants database. You could look at previous tenants. How many times has that tenant gone to the ombudsman?
Yeah.
You know, has that tenant been kicked out?
Have a little look at that before you decide whether you want them as your tenant.
Yeah. Has the tenant been behind on their rent? And likewise, to be fair, if you're a tenant, has the landlord got a history of hiking up the... I mean, that's way too vague.
It would expose it, wouldn't it? Expose everything, which isn't a bad thing.
I think it's a good thing because it would promote good landlords, good tenants, good councils. I've just got a feeling it's going to be rubbish. But I mean, hey, it sounds good on paper, right? So on paper, I like the idea of it. The tenant rights are going to be strengthened. So enhanced tenant rights, including challenging rent hikes, ending auction-style renting, and requesting pets. So the requesting pet, it sounds like, do you talked earlier about the dog?
Yeah.
It sounds like if I said, sorry, I've got a dog, you'd have to go, oh, well, I can't discriminate against dog owners, so therefore I'm going to have to let you in anyway. What do you think of that?
I mean, at the moment, I don't really like the sound of it, to be honest.
It also says discrimination against benefit tenants or families with kids would be illegal.
I think that's fair, to be fair. I know people that can't rent because they've got kids, and I think that's just outrageous.
Well, don't you think the same about someone on benefits? Or someone that's got a dog?
I don't know about the dog.
You're emotionally involved.
No,
with
I love dogs. And I want a dog, and I always loved dogs, and I think people should be allowed a dog. What I was going to say is people, and me included, don't always like change. So I can remember when wheelie bins were introduced, and nobody wanted them. They were like, oh, they'll be rubbish. But now, would you go back to that old-fashioned bin being split by foxes?
Well, you see it in London, because they don't have wheelie bins.
It's rubbish, isn't it?
It is rubbish, yeah.
And another thing which people didn't want was no smoking in public places. Like, I'm not a smoker, but I thought that was really unfair on smokers. But you get used to things and you adapt. So, I don't know. I mean, I'm happy with the no dog thing, but if someone really wanted a dog, I think it is fair enough in a way. What do you think?
I think it's a tricky one, right? Because I think when you're a landlord, you very much see it from a landlord's perspective.
Exactly.
Right, it's my house. If I don't want a dog in it, I don't want a dog in it. However, when Tiffany was moving down here, what a joke was that?
A joke? Terrible. I couldn't rent a house for her.
No.
I couldn't be a guarantor for her. In fact, they turned around and said, we don't do single mums, which really got my goat.
And it was just a whole estate agencies. Oh, you're single? No. And it's like, how is that allowed?
No.
So when you're looking at it from the tenant's point of view.
I'd be the opposite. I'd want to give it to those people.
But would you if you thought they weren't going to pay? That's what it's going to be, isn't it?
Well, no, but what they're basically saying is, we don't think you're going to pay because you're a single mum, which is bad.
Yeah, but what about if that's backed up? Like when I first passed my driving test, I was a 17-year-old boy. My insurance was ridiculous.
You could get a guarantor if you were a single mum.
I started to pay $3,000 a year. Anna, who was a 17-year-old girl, hers was like a quarter of the price of my insurance. And you could say, well, they're discriminating against young boys and men in general. But the facts are that I was probably more likely to have a crash. Did have crashes.
Several.
Because 17-year-old boys tend to drive
more crashes
like idiots.
Yeah.
So it is discriminating, but it's broad brush stroke. But from their business, their insurance business, and they know I'm going to be more likely to have a crash than Anna, so therefore they're going to charge me more. And in the same way, you're a landlord, you know that a single mom or someone on benefits or someone with a dog is more likely to not pay, stroke, damage. The reason you don't want a dog...
I would say the dog more likely to damage, but I don't think single mums were less likely to pay. Because they get LHA for a start. They're probably more likely to pay.
So they're relying on the councils?
They're relying on the councils, and they probably
know what they're like.
But they probably don't want to move around. They probably just want that security for themselves and their family.
There must be a reason, though. They're not just going, you know what? Do you know what I really hate? Single mums. I don't think single moms should be allowed to live. They're not thinking that. There's a reason that they're discriminating against single moms. It's probably to do with not paying or damage to the properties. I don't know what, but there's going to be a reason, isn't there? If you look at the stats are going to back it up. And at the end of the day, it's the landlord's home.
Well, it's their property, isn't it?
It's their property. It's their house.
But this is the shift. So instead, I'm a landlord, as you know, obviously. Instead of thinking, well, it's mine and I can have it who I want in there. That's the shift then, isn't it? The shift is, no, you're providing this service and these are your guidelines. If you want to be a landlord, this is it.
So where should it be?
Exactly. But that's the shift. And I think
at the same time, while I'm thinking that, I was outraged when Tiffany couldn't find somewhere to rent. So I can't have it both ways.
No.
Which is why I think we're quite subjective, especially I always think I'm subjective because I've been a tenant. I'm not anymore, but I've been a tenant most of my life.
Yeah.
So I can look at it from both points of views. And I actually think in today's society and how we live and how we operate in all of our businesses, I actually think this is probably overall probably fair to bring it in that you can't discriminate against people.
Yeah, I do. Because otherwise those people are not going to have anywhere to live, are they?
I know.
And I think that's in itself disgusting.
Yeah.
I think they need
that's
somewhere.
Worse.
And it's children as well. And what the hell have they done?
I agree. So we quite like it, although
I'm happy with that.
Although from a landlord and our business point of view, it might cause other problems. Overall, we're happy with those tenants' rights. All right. So some of the changes between this one and the original Renters Reform Bill. Well, number one, it's coming in straight away. So the other one was obviously and it's going to affect new and existing
ASTs.
Yeah, so if you've got an AST, this will replace...
Yeah.
Yeah, that surprised me a little bit. I thought it would be new tenancies only, but hey-ho, it's going to be everything. And this is going to be coming in looking like summer next year. Another one, I actually don't like this one. I don't know what your thoughts, but tenants can give notice from the first day of their tenancy.
Why don't you like that?
Can you imagine moving in on day one? You hand your notice in. It's like, what's the point in moving in?
Well, it's their hassle, isn't it? They've paid for the removal people. In actual fact, you'll be able to get another renter very quickly.
Yeah. Landlords needing to sell or move in must wait 12 months and give 4 months' notice. What do you think about that?
I think that's annoying for landlords, especially if it's like a property that we had once where we wanted to move out but ultimately wanted to move back in. Station Road.
Yeah.
And so that could be annoying.
So tell them what you did to that tenant.
Do I have to?
Yeah, tell them what you did to that tenant.
I can't remember now.
I can remember quite well. I was the tenant, by the way. So you owned a property.
Mm-hmm.
I moved in and we signed would be a 6-month AST, but under the agreement, in principle.
You knew we were moving back at some point.
But after a year. But that's not what the contract said, to be fair. The contract said 6 months. And then after 4 months.
It wasn't 4 months.
It was?
It wasn't.
Because we moved out after 6 months.
No, I thought you moved out after 10.
No, 6 months. We only lived there 6 months.
You didn't.
We did. After 4 months, we got handed in our 2 months' notice. It's true. We said when your 6 months comes to an end, you're on the street.
I beg to differ.
So, but you can't you? You could do that right now.
Mm.
What do you? I actually probably agree with that as well. I think if you're renting your property, 12 months.
You've made me look really bad now.
That's the truth, isn't it? I haven't made you look bad. Yeah, I didn't do it. I was on the receiving end.
Just in my support here for a second. It was an absolutely fantastic house, wasn't it?
Oh, well.
And you did get very cheap rent.
I did get cheap rent because I knew that we were only going to have it for a year. Well, it turns out it was less than a year.
What?
I knew I was only going to have it for a year, but yeah.
We're still friends.
Yeah, well, at the end of the day, the contract is the contract, and the contract was 6 months, so it's fair enough. If I'd wanted a year, I should have signed a year contract.
Yeah.
So, and back then, it was acceptable for landlords to abuse their tenants, even when they are their children. So, whereas now, what do you think? Then 12 months, and then you got to give 4 months' notice. I actually think that's probably fair as well.
I do as well.
If you just
it's a right hassle moving.
It is.
It is real. You don't want it, do you? Telling everybody this is your new address, and it is such a hassle.
The only thing I don't like about it is it makes property investing far more illiquid. Because if you've got a property and you rent it to a new tenant, suddenly now I've got to wait a year before I can sell it. Yeah. So that's quite...
I think...
Or best case, 4 months.
If you're a landlord and you don't intend... there's accidental landlords, isn't there, who might want to go back in. There are reasons. But if you're a landlord who's got a portfolio, like us, there's no problem with that.
No.
Why would you want to sell it? And if you did, you could put it on the market after 8 months. And then by the time that tenant's moved out, sell it. You could do that, couldn't you? You
could. Also, we're assuming now that you're if you've got a property for 6 months, don't rent it out to a family on an AST.
Yeah.
Rent it out as service accommodation.
Yeah, do something else with it.
Or a long-term short stay let, or do, because really you are taking the mickey out of people renting it.
You don't want them to be in and out. No, that's not good.
It's not fair on someone to move house and only have 6 months at the property and have to do the removals and then do it again. It's different if circumstances change, but if that's your plan and you don't tell them and they don't know, it's kind of taking the mickey, isn't it?
And like now where mortgage rates go up and landlords have got more reason to want to sell or kick people out, that's giving less stability for tenants even more, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is. And you do want, when it's your home and when you're living there, it's very annoying to be kicked out. It's very annoying to have your rent hiked up. It's very,
there's got to be some rules.
Yeah, there has. And I mean, it's very early days. It depends how these are implemented. But I would say, I'm not very worried about this at all, really.
No,
I don't think this is particularly bad. I think it's enforcing fair rentals. The only thing that I was really kind of anti was the getting rid of Section 21 because I know how much of a pain the usual process is. But if the new ombudsman is good, I think this all hinges on that ombudsman. If that ombudsman is good and works well, then I think this is a brilliant system.
Do you know what? I know somebody, though, who goes and interviews prospective tenants at their home address.
At their home address?
At their home address.
What do they do if they're like, oh, I'm moving down to London, where do you live at the moment? York.
They probably don't go then.
Just discriminate against that tenant.
Yeah. But it is a good idea. I'm not saying we should do it.
I think it's quite a good idea as well, because then it's almost like doing a check. Like, Jeremy did it.
Do a bit more of a check than normal, because we are a bit slap-Harry, aren't we, on how we let people in?
Yeah.
Like, I know a letting agent that are absolutely appalling. They've done a terrible job for me. We had it as a HMO. We moved far away. We didn't want it as a HMO anymore. And we wanted just a simple single let in. So this letting agent put a single let person in there. About a month later, they rang me up. Oh, they're damaging it, this, that and the other. Oh, but by the way, we can't kick them out because it's a HMO. You need a HMO licence now to kick them out. But it was 2 couples. So I'd got the AST. I said, how is that a HMO? It's 2 couples. Couple, 2 lots of people. Oh, but one of them had a kid that wasn't mentioned on the AST. So it was technically a HMO. And I said, well, how do the council know? Like, they don't think they're in a HMO. Who says it's a HMO? The letting agent told the council. And now the council wouldn't let us kick them out.
Oh.
So the end of that story.
See, this sort of red tape is the stuff that worries me.
Yeah.
With any of these new rules. Like, in principle, you're reading out the headlines, you're like, this all makes sense, this is fine. But when they bring in stupid red tape
and then
like
you get a stupid letting agent to muddy that water for you.
Yeah.
So what we said was, well, that's your problem. You're the managing agent. And they had to pay for us to have a HMO licence in order to kick the people out.
Fair.
Fair.
Because they messed up.
Yeah.
They messed up.
But that's the kind of hassle you don't want, isn't it?
Yeah, I agree. So what, sort of seeing the overall view of what's kind of coming in, what are your overall thoughts? Have you got any points that you think would be worth people being aware of?
My overall thoughts are that over the last 17 years in property, I've seen change after change after change, where landlords have bailed out. Article 4, Section 24, like, oh, you can't have any more HMOs in that area, or now you've got to pay on the interest, and all these things that have come in. Interest rates going up. There's quite a lot of changes that have happened over the last years. And we've stuck it out, and it's always been okay. But I think that I do feel for landlords, because I think it's quite worrying, and I know landlords they're leaving by the drones at the moment. But my overall thoughts are, there's good in there. There's things we can do. At the end of the day, we are responsible for our own, what we do. So I do know somebody who buys property. I'm not saying this is a good thing, but they buy property and don't have any tenants. They just have it empty.
What, they're just sitting there? See, I hate that. I think that we're in a situation where we've got a housing shortage. Tell you who does that a lot. There's a lot of foreign investors from like Saudi and places where they buy places.
That's what these are.
Is it? They buy places in London.
Yeah.
And they just buy it for the asset. It'll go up in value. We'll keep an eye. But a lot of these properties just fall to rack and ruin. And I just think that we're in a situation where we're like I said, we've got a housing crisis. I almost think that should be illegal to do that. Like, do you know how when you've not got a job and you're on the dole, you've got to prove that you're trying to to get a job? I think if you've got a property that's just sitting empty, you should either. The only thing where I'm thinking this might be a bit different is with like developments. Like if you've got like, for example, Stadium we're doing at the moment. Obviously right now it's empty, but we're refurbing it. But then what would happen if we bought that and couldn't afford to refurb it? And that's my only worry. But if you've got a property that's in fully good condition, you'd have to think this through. Yeah. Because what you wouldn't want is to be developers where they're having forced
to do it in a time frame.
Yeah. But outside of that, if it's just a normal buy-to-let property, I think you should have to rent it out.
But my point is, I agree, but my point is, you can choose. You don't have to be a landlord to be a property investor.
No. In fact, hardly any of our properties. In fact, I don't think I've got any at the moment that are just buy-to-let properties. Everything is either social housing, service accommodation, HMO,
commercial
development,
flips.
So this isn't going to really affect me at all. It's going to affect because it's just not the most.
But do you know who it will affect if landlords are all pulling out and doing that?
Go on.
The people that are renting, because there'll be less stock.
Tell you who it will help as well. Rent-to-renters. If you're looking to do rent-to-rent,
you
go to the landlord. You're like, look, right now all this legislation's coming in. Why don't you rent it to me on a company let and let me take care of it for you?
Yeah.
You haven't got to worry about anything.
Yeah, that will be much easier.
Here's the contract. You can kick me out at a moment's notice if it doesn't work.
And it's a good thing that people will be going to social housing, won't it? Because people won't have anywhere to live. And they'll end up going to the council and then there'll be all these offers of social housing. I've
got a feeling, though, that Labour... Because I actually think, again, from an investor's point of view, social housing is great. If you can rent your properties to the government. But I actually think it's a joke. In the same way, do you know how much the NHS pay for paracetamol?
What?
How much is a pack of paracetamol? If you work in Tesco?
Not much.
Like 35p, 50p, something like that. Do you know how much the NHS, do you know when they prescribe you paracetamol?
Oh yeah, it's a lot, isn't it? 10 quid. Yeah.
Yeah, right. It's ridiculous. It's just outright. How on earth? You'd think a company that was buying millions of paracetamol tablets.
You don't have to do that though. You can just go and buy it for 35p.
You don't have to do what?
Use their prescription to get it.
Yeah, but it's free for you. It's them that pay. So do you know when you get it free on the NHS?
Oh, if you get free, yes.
Yeah. So it's like, do you want paracetamol? It's prescribed, so I get it for free. It costs them 10 quid.
£10, yeah.
And it's like, how on earth has the government and the NHS got themselves in a situation where they're paying 20 times more than I can pay for Tesco? Tesco making a profit on that 35p.
Yeah.
And they're paying 10 quid. It's ridiculous. But I also think the same thing as how much the government pay landlords for social housing. You can make so much money. Like, why on earth are they relying on private landlords and paying them serviced accommodation hotel prices?
Yeah, why don't they get some?
Why don't they just get their own stock?
Well, I think they do, don't they? They do want their own stock.
Well, I think Labour will do that.
I think so.
I think that will change.
And I think some of these landlords that are ditching out they'll buy up some of the properties.
Yeah, I think so. I think that they'll buy their own. I think a lot of the social housing will over time change.
Yeah.
And I think Labour are really big on it, affordable housing, social housing. They want a lot of that, and they're trying to build a lot of the houses they want to build. They want to build like they're 1.5 million.
The problem with the whole this, as far as normal landlords think, is the two biggest fears are the tenants won't pay, and the tenants will trash it. And there doesn't seem to be very much covering the landlords in here, does there?
No.
And I think that is the fear. If they trash it, if they don't pay, and then we can't get them out, and the law is against us, I think that's a fair worry.
Well, I think that's a very fair worry. When you hire a car, right, and if you lease a car and you have to give it back, they're going to be looking at the car, and our car is something that you'd expect a fair amount of wear and tear. You're driving it around, but they'll be like, oh, there's a little scratch there, there's a little, right.
Yeah.
We're going to fix it back up to standard, but you've got to pay for it. That's what they say.
Yeah.
I think it should be the same. And at the moment, from my experience as a tenant, it kind of is like that.
Only up to the amount of the deposit. So, I told you about the HMO people. 10 months later, we got them out, and it cost us 10 grand to fix the house.
See, that's ridiculous. That's not fair on the other way.
No.
That's not like, oh, they haven't got a place to live. That's like they're taking the piss.
Yeah. So everything was broke. Tiles. There was they'd had a flood in there. We had to do a new kitchen, even though the kitchen had only been a year because they'd wrecked it.
Yeah.
So it cost us 10 grand to fix it, but their deposit, which we haven't had back yet, by the way, from this agent, was for like 1.5, 2 grand, about 2 grand.
But that's where if the ombudsman was good, if it is, they should look at it, and in the same way the courts would do. See, is that if I came around and trashed your property and I couldn't afford to pay, I'd end up on a payment plan.
Doesn't seem to happen though, does it?
It doesn't, but it should.
It should, but I think that is why. I think all of those rules, not all, but we've just said some of those rules are really fair, but there doesn't seem much protection the other way around, does there?
No.
And I think that's the
worry.
worry.
I think they're the two key ones. I agree with you.
The trashing and the not paying.
Trashing and not paying. If they don't pay, I don't think we should kick them out immediately.
I agree.
think we should give them a bit of time to pay because it's their home. But I think they still owe you the money. If you have any other debt, if I don't pay my tax bill, they won't immediately take on my assets. They'll say, oh, right, you owe us the money.
Yeah.
But then I've got to pay it. I can't just not ever pay it.
And you get a CCJ if you don't.
Exactly.
Whereas with this debt, it doesn't go on your credit file.
That's a joke.
So if you don't pay your mobile phone bill, if you don't pay your gas bill, eventually that will hit your credit rating.
And this argument, a stupid argument that you hear people say, they'll say, oh yeah, but a house is a basic human right. So, yeah.
So is electricity.
So is food.
Yeah.
What would you rather have, food or a house?
Food.
That's more important. You can't go and steal from Sainsbury's.
No. Yeah. So there are big gaping holes, really, aren't there? To be honest with you,
we need to see it when it's finalised. I've got a feeling that the two really important landlord ones that you've just addressed probably aren't. I'm happy with all the protection for the tenants.
Me too.
But where's the protection
and
for
the
the
tenants'
landlords?
rights? You can't discriminate about them.
Where's the landlord's rights? What happens if I don't get my money? Because I tell you what's going to happen. Your mortgage payments.
They'll still go up.
They'll still charge.
And the landlords often, some are, but a lot of the time they're not making much money, especially if they're accidental landlords.
Well, especially with interest. I mean, that's going to go down, but especially with interest rates right now. I mean, if you're
Some
doing
aren't making
buy to
any
let,
money.
you're doing very well to make money if you've got a mortgage.
Yeah.
But
people think greedy landlord though, but it's not always the case, is it?
Well, I read there's more landlord repossessions right now than there's been for decades because landlords can't afford to pay.
The average landlord is owed just under £1,000. That's the average across the UK. So most landlords are owed money at the moment.
Yeah, crazy.
It is, isn't it?
That is very, very crazy. Very, very crazy.
It's like theft, isn't it?
It is. It's legal theft. It's like, oh, well, it's only a landlord.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Just don't pay them. What about the mortgage company? No, you've got to pay them. You've got to pay them, but they've not got to pay you. If they do, what? Credit rating? Nah.
So what I was thinking anyway is we've got a tenant in one of our properties. She's been there 10 years. Really nice lady. The property's about 5 hours. It's in Doncaster. It's about 5 hours from where we live. So we've got an arrangement with her where she pays less, just under the market value of rent. It goes up a bit, but she pays less, but she does the repairs and she looks after it. Very rarely get a phone call from her. Anyway, we want to sell that property and we've arranged to sell it to her. And she can't get a deposit together, but we've managed with our mortgage person to arrange it so that she can actually still buy the property.
Nice.
And we're not getting any less for it. She's happy. She's over the moon. She's more than happy. So if they've got a stake in it, like let's say they think they might get offered to buy it in 10 years, so a reverse lease option, they're more likely to look after it. They're more likely to pay because deal's off if they don't pay. So I just think we need to be creative and think of new creative ways that we can keep them happy, make it priority for them to pay. And I'm sure there are ways around it.
Plus the creative strategies we talked about earlier, service accommodation, social housing, etc., is a great way of getting paid about being affected by any of this because you're not. Well, service accommodation is obviously different, and with social housing, you're just letting the housing association take care of it all. It's not your problem. And
commercial, flips, development. There's lots of things you can do, isn't there?
Oh, 100%. There's lots of different strategies. And I don't think it's too different from what was, number one, going to happen anyway. But number two, it's not too different from what it's like now.
Yeah. And if you're a good landlord and you don't want to kick people out, like us with the 10-year person, that's fine, isn't it?
100%, 100%. Well, guys, I hope you found that useful. When we know more and when more of this becomes apparent, we will, of course, update you and let you know. So don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more updates. Hope you enjoyed that. Hope you found it useful. I'm Russell Leeds.
I'm Sue Gray.
And we'll see you next week.